Wisdom. It's an incredibly valuable asset. Some would say more precious than gold. It's attractive, appealing, admirable. Conversely, a lack of wisdom is the basis of immaturity, blind spots, and bad decisions. Wisdom. It can be gained over time, but it can't be rushed. But wisdom can be shared. That's precisely what we are here to do right now. Today, we are here to hack wisdom, to distill it, to understand it, and to process it. Why? To get better at life. Welcome to the main thing. This is your new 9-minute podcast. I'm your host, Skip Linneberg, and I've set out to interview the wisest people I know. We'll see what we can learn from each one when they're faced with an incredibly difficult, soul-piercing question. If it's your first time here, I'm Skip Linneberg, and I'll be your host today. Each episode, we bring you a concise, high-impact wisdom lesson from one of the wisest people I know. Studying their wisdom and learning together, we all get just a little bit better at this thing called life. Today, you'll hear from Frercks, a 29-year-old youth pastor who is an old soul, wise beyond his years. He has the challenging and vital job of mentoring middle school and high school students outside the classroom. Working as a youth pastor, Dylan comes alongside teenagers to provide hope and encouragement and a sense of belonging while introducing them to Jesus. No, this is not a religious podcast, and this will not be all about God. Don't worry, because from this interview with Frercks, you will come away with valuable wisdom and insights from someone who finds creative ways to relate with others and build trust. Here's a bit more about our special guest, youth pastor Frercks. Amidst the fast-paced world we live in, Dylan advocates for a slower approach to life, emphasizing deep spiritual formation. He hopes to inspire us all to embrace a more reflective path in our spiritual journey. Frercks' journey in faith and service is underpinned by a Bachelor of Science degree in religion from Liberty University. He brings a decade of experience in student ministry to his current role at River Ridge Church. Alongside his professional endeavors, Dylan finds joy in photography, travel, and exploring the latest technology. Dylan and his wife Elizabeth reside in the Charleston, West Virginia area. Now settle in and get ready, because over the next 9 minutes, you will discover why Frercks is one of the wisest people I know. Frercks, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Skip. This is super exciting. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. You are my second guest who kind of requested to be on the show.
Yes.
And I that's on me. I'm so glad that we're doing this, and really should have asked you a long time ago, but here we are.
I feel like it puts me in a special position that I really feel like I have to perform well.
Speaking of performing well, Dylan is one of the pastors at my church. And Dylan, last Sunday, you were called out of the bullpen to come into the game on short notice. You want to tell us a little bit about how your Saturday night and your Sunday morning went?
Yeah, so I've been trying to put a high value on Sabbath and actually taking a day off. So I've been really trying on Saturdays to not do much work. And so on Saturday night at about 8 o'clock, my pastor called me and he said, "Hey, Dylan, I'm starting to feel sick. I don't know that I'm going to make it to church on Sunday. This has not happened in 20 years.
Right.
But I might need you to preach my sermon. Do you have a sermon ready?" And I was like, "No, I don't just have a sermon casually ready." And so he sent me his. I took one look through of it and then went back to watching the Hunger Games because I was super invested at that point. And woke up on Sunday morning and confirmed with him that he wasn't going to make it because he was violently ill.
Worse by that point,
yep. And so I showed up at the church. I took about an hour to edit his sermon to give it kind of my own flair. And then after an hour of editing, I did about 30 minutes of practice and run through on my own, and then went out and delivered it twice. It was 16 pages long based on my formatting.
Crazy, 16 pages.
And you have for about 40 minutes.
You have to fit that into a window of 30, 35 minutes.
Yeah, I tend to go over the window. But yeah, so I spoke for about 35 minutes, I think, with very little preparation, but it worked out.
folks will have heard me introduce you in the intro as a youth pastor. What's that look like on a weekly basis? What kind of stuff do you do? How do you enjoy your role?
Yeah, so my role at the church is really multifaceted. I do primarily work with middle school and high school students.
Yeah.
I occasionally work with college age students as well. And a lot of the time I spend my weeks doing things that are completely outside that scope. And sometimes it looks like prepping a Bible study. Sometimes it looks like, writing a devotional or something like that. Or writing a blog for parents that they can, learn something about parenting. Other times it just looks like meeting up at a coffee shop with a friend or with a kid and talking about life and, laughing or playing disc golf or, it varies week to week. The underpinning whole thing, though, is I just want to help people take their next step.
Awesome.
And so just kind of always looking for ways to do that and presenting every week to God and saying, hey, what's it look like to be faithful with this moment?
Dylan, creativity is a common thread that we have. We are both creative content producers, communicators. We like to explore new things. I'd love to hear you talk a minute or two about being a creative person, living a creative lifestyle, being open to learning and discovery. How do you approach that in your world, in your life?
Yeah, I love creativity. I was raised in a family where the arts were really pushed with me. So I started playing music pretty young, back in elementary school. And I've always been kind of a creative type. In 5th grade, my school had a website design team, and I was picked for that. And so I was coding in 5th grade, making a website for my public school. And then when I started getting access to like photo editing, my friends would want cool profile pictures for MySpace. And I would edit photos for them for MySpace. And they were horribly corny and weirdly vibrant and stuff. As we look at teenagers, which I work with a ton, listening to their music and listening to the things that are kind of infiltrating their life really show me where their heart is and the things that they care about. Our church has the core value of we never stop growing. And I really kind of just want to be that type of person. I want to keep growing. I want to keep learning and keep progressing. And, I recognize that I still have rough edges that God needs to work out. And he does that so often through a good book or a good album. Or a good movie or something like that.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us. 192 extra minutes of wisdom. That's what you get when you become a patron of the Main Thing podcast. Many of you continue to say, we want to hear more from these wise guests. That's precisely what patrons of our podcast get. Exclusive access to bonus episodes called The Whole Thing. These 30-minute special shows bring you a deeper dive into our guests' wisdom. Less editing, more laughter. Less time limits, more stories. Unlock those 192 extra minutes of wisdom for yourself for as little as $9 per month through the Patreon platform. And when you become a patron, you also get access to wisdom essays, behind-the-scenes glimpses, and access to special patron-only wisdom gatherings. Head over to patreon.com/themainthingpodcast. Go unlock your 192 extra minutes of wisdom. Dylan Frercks, what's the main thing you've learned in your lifetime so far?
Skip, the main thing I've learned in my lifetime so far is that whether intentionally or not, we are all being formed by someone or something.
Oh, wow. We're all being formed by someone or something.
Yeah.
Take us inside that.
So as I look at life, and I don't want to take full credit for this thought because it's been boiled down a lot through one of my favorite spiritual teachers, which is John Mark Comer. As I look at life, I realize that whether it's because of our family or our friends or the music we listen to or the culture that's surrounding us or the ads we see on TV or the pictures we see on social media, whatever it might be, that we are all being formed, or as he would even put it sometimes, deformed into a certain type of person. And as a Christian, of course, what I'm looking for is I want to be formed into the character of Christ. As I look at the book of Galatians, chapter 5, and I see the fruit of the Spirit, that is what I'm looking for in my life. And I ask myself all the time, am I looking more loving and peaceful and patient and kind and good and all those things that, we see in Scripture? I'm always kind of asking myself that question of, am I getting any closer to that? But I also recognize in my life that there's been times that through, bad relationships or bad friendships or just an unhealthy kind of consumeristic mentality of media or things, that I've been deformed into a certain person as well. And so here's the thing, though. Everything wants to have a formative shaping influence on our life. I talked in a sermon just recently about how ad companies spend millions and millions and millions of dollars to tell us a certain message that they want us to buy. And I kind of mentioned it in my sermon that we buy the message a lot. Like there's a lot of times that we are sold an idea and we buy it hook, line, and sinker.
Right.
And it really changes us into a certain type of person. And so, kind of my main thing is that idea of we either can be intentional about what we're being formed by. And for me, like I've decided in my life that that's going to be Jesus. For other people of different faiths and stuff, that's fine. They have other things and they have other things they want to be formed by. But we could also kind of unintentionally be deformed by things if we're passive about that growth. There are so many pieces of our life that we just haven't analyzed and we haven't asked ourselves, what is this doing to me? Or it's boiled down into another big leader. It's Simon Sinek's start with your why.
Yes.
What is your why? What is the thing you're going for? I think so often that's dictated to us by culture. It's like, my why is so I can have a big, nice retirement, or my why is so that I can look like I have my life put together, and my why is so I can go on big trips, or whatever that thing is. I think that having a nice house is perfectly fine if that's what you want. And going on a nice trip, I've been on some great trips and I love that. And my wife finds a lot of joy in that. And I like taking pictures and it's fun, it's good. And we get to experience like the good life that God created us for through some of those things. But if those are our why, then I think that's maybe the bigger issue, is we haven't really figured out what we're living for. And because of that, we'll just kind of take whatever we can get.
You're only fully alive when you're traveling. That would be sad, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're taking maybe 3 trips a year?
Yeah.
So you're only fully alive for 3 weeks out of 52.
Right.
That would be sad.
Yeah, that would definitely be sad for sure.
Dylan, for folks who are listening, who are trying your main thing on for size right now, and they're saying, do I really need to live this way? What are some symptoms or some signs of unrest that they might be feeling that would indicate to them that they need to spend more time practicing your main thing?
Yeah, I want to be sensitive here because I'm a person who's been to therapy and loves it. I'm a person who's had mental health issues and acknowledges that those are very real too.
Me too.
But I also recognize that in the moments in my life where I am being deformed by certain messaging and things like that I do become more anxious and depressed, and there isn't hope to life, and there isn't joy, and there's not things that I want to experience, and there's not happiness, and I'm discontent and all these things. And it's really interesting to me that as we look, and I talk to students about this all the time, as we look at this up and coming generation, one of the things they're feeling is more anxious, more depressed, more discontent, all those things. I think it's also correlated with this more pervasive media landscape we live in. I think it is much more difficult now to be formed by our main thing, whatever that main thing for them might be, because we're constantly inundated with other messages from other places. And one of the safeguards I think we need there is to be honest, like, do I need constant access to Instagram or Twitter or YouTube or the news or whatever it is? And I talk to people all the time and they're like, yeah, I have this pent up stress or this anxiety, or I'm getting more angry, or I'm just feeling like there's something going on in my heart. I'm like, well, that's the warning sign that you haven't figured out what's forming you yet.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if you ask people like, hey, what news are you watching? They will acknowledge that the news they're watching is probably not helpful for them. That would be great for us to just have that filter of it saying, okay, like, what is the thing in my life that's causing this? Can I get away from it? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, but It's worth trying at least.
Yeah, good advice. Dylan, as we wrap up here today, any encouragement or intentions that you might wish to share with our audience of growth-minded wisdom seekers.
Dallas Willard, in his book Renovation of the Heart, used to talk about this idea of one of the primary things that stops us from change is thinking that we're not capable of it. And so I want to, remind your audience and the people that are listening that we are capable of change, but it is a long process. And so the encouragement is this: figure out your why, figure out what you care about, figure out what you want to be formed by, make that your true north, and head in that direction.
We can change.
Yep.
I love it. Great final thought. Dylan, great place to leave it. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your wisdom today, and I will see you Sunday.
I'll see you Sunday.
Wow, that goes by incredibly fast, doesn't it? Time flies when you're hacking wisdom. I hope you're left wanting more. Sync up with us again next time on The Main Thing for 9 more minutes of wisdom.